lecture, right? Last week we have basically discussed about it was really just an overview, okay, for you to understand, okay, the context of Muslim societies. That means we as Muslims, okay, we are not homogeneous, okay, we are heterogeneous, which means we have different backgrounds, different culture, okay, and different history. Although we share the same faith and beliefs, okay, these different experiences also sometimes, okay, turns us into different groups of people. Okay, and this then contributes or influence our relationship with the media that we consume. Okay, and also how we interpret or how we are influenced by the content that we watch or we listen or we read. Okay. So before we start to go through the different coming topics where we start to look at media and society through specific theories that are mostly established by the Westerners, okay, by the Americans, okay, we must first understand the context of our own society first, okay? So that was the main objective of the topic in the last class. So in today's class, okay, it's also just a simple topic, all right? We are going to look at the historical, we call it development of media and communication in the Muslim world. Because obviously when we talk about the media, okay, we would consider it as a Western invention. And some theories, some media scholars, they say that actually the media, the mass media, has an ethnicity. What does it mean, has an ethnicity? You know, you have, okay, Xiao Jun Wang, right? You're Hamzah, right? Yes. Okay, Hamzah is Chinese, okay? And then who else here? Okay, Shahad, where are you from?
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi, okay? So that is what we call ethnicity. That means our blood, our background, our culture is specific. But when I say a medium like media, television, okay, radio, books, they are inanimated objects. That means they don't have life, but yet they have values. They are biased because they have some kind of ethnicity. What do I mean by that? Because most people say media is American. You understand what we mean, the media is American? Okay, the media is not Chinese, the media is not Arabic, the media is not Malay, it is American. Why? Because it has values, American values. That when you watch all those things that you watch, the movies that you watch, okay, even if it is a Malay movie, even if it is, I don't know, a Hollywood movie, okay, usually it has American values. Can you understand? So we have all been very accepting. Okay, we don't really sit down and think, okay, whether television is biased or not. We don't really think about that. Okay, we just accept. Why do we tend to accept? Then we go back to the history that we discussed in the last class. Okay, because all of us, we have some kind of history that is related to the West. Okay, maybe not China. China history unique. All right, but even today, all right, China cannot admit when it comes to the media, it is still American. Okay, what do we mean even Chinese media is American? Okay, in China, you have singing competition, right? Just like Malaysian Idol, American Idol. Okay, the only thing that is Chinese about that program is the language, isn't it, right? But the content, okay, the way they do the judging is all just like American Idol. Okay, so this is what we mean that media in general is American. Okay, and that we tend to accept because our history, we have already been very dependent on the West. Okay, so you've seen, right, how the Africa were colonized by the French and the British, okay, in Malaysia as well, okay, or in Saudi, probably they were never formally colonized, okay, but they are in friendly terms with the British. So their media system, our media system, okay, content are all very westernized and specifically Americanized. Understand? Okay, so later on we will try to discuss all of this in more detail. So today we just want to acknowledge that actually, okay, in our own history as Muslims, all right, in the Islamic civilizations, okay, media and communication is not really something that is new. Okay, actually historically, okay, we too have been able to establish, okay, very effective and efficient media systems. Okay, but of course that is part of the history, but the what we call it, the contemporary times, the present that we are living in, okay, it is not an Islamic media, it is mostly an imported Western media. Okay, right? So basically that is just the introduction, right? So you can look at the slides that I've already shared in your Google Classroom. Okay. Can you see the slide? Yes. All right. So here, all right, media and communication landscape during the early Muslim societies. Okay. So you can see this. This is actually an ancient art, okay, depicting how Muslims, okay, how they learn. They learn via communicating. And these are actually books at the back here. Okay. So what are the contents? Okay, this is what we're going to look at today. Okay. So first, we start with the sources of Islamic principles. Okay. We can say, all right, that Islam is actually a communication-based religion. Okay, what do we mean by Islam being a communication-based religion? Okay, because all of the teachings, okay, in Islam is about you having to share and transmit good, isn't it? Right? Okay. And of course, the first word, okay, that Allah sent to the Prophet is what? What was the first word?
اقرأ.
That people asked, yes?
اقرأ, right?
Qra, yes. All right, it is to read. Okay, and that in the sense also is an indication of how communication is very central in the religion. Okay, why was the Prophet asked to read? Because with reading comes information, and through information, then only he can disseminate Islamic teachings. Okay, so communication is part of basis of the religion. Okay, and we cannot deny, okay, the sources of Islamic principles. What principles? Any type of principles that govern our social, politics, everyday life. Okay, where do these rules come from? Mainly they come from the Al-Quran. Okay, but of course when we read the Quran, okay, it is not listed as rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3. Okay, there is a way of learning the Quran, but the Quran also is a communication medium. Okay, so the second one is the Sunnah, or the deeds, utterances, and trade approvals of the Prophet. Okay, so the Prophet is actually a walking media. You understand what I mean as a walking media? Because whatever he does is actually transmitting information. Okay, through the Sunnah. Okay, by the way, looking at how the Prophet eats is actually informing us about the rules, okay, and the adab. Okay, so can you understand here? All right, so all of this, okay, is part of communication. Okay, and of course, right, okay, we have the ijtihad and the ijma. What are these? Okay, these are also communication process, okay, that are vital in the Islamic religion. Okay, For example, as we understand, not all rules are clearly stated in the Quran, okay, and some contemporary developments, okay, we cannot compare it with the Sunnah by the Rasulullah because it did not exist then, okay. Then we need what? We need ijtihad. That means the scholars, they need to discuss and they need to refer to the Quran, to the Sunnah, and all of these are communication processes. Okay, so what? For example, smoking. I like to ask, smoking, is it halal or haram? Makruh. What is it? All right, it's not written specifically in the Quran. Okay, but ijtihad, the scholars, okay, they did their research, and most of them say it's what?
Haram.
It's haram. But obviously some Muslims have their own ijtihad. Okay, they follow their own rules and say it's okay. They don't say it's halal, but it's okay. Alright? So all of these are communication processes. Okay, and of course, ijtihad is independent reasoning. Okay, but if it's issues of bigger concerns, okay, it will take the consensus of the ulama, okay, via ijma. Okay, a communication base, as it implies the deliberation and consultation among the elite of the ummah and ulama. Okay, so communication is central. Okay, so ijma ulama has said what? Smoking is still haram. Okay, so here, okay, basically just to introduce you, okay, to understand that every aspect of the life of a Muslim is based from communication. Okay? So, right, communication among the early Muslims. Okay, so who are the early Muslims? Okay, we will start the history during the time of the prophets. Okay, so obviously at that time, okay, even the prophet himself is illiterate. So most of the communication processes is oral. You know what's oral, right? It's just verbal, okay, through speaking. So it was the basic mode of social interaction among the people, okay? And the Quran and the Islamic teachings, okay, words of Allah was transmitted by the prophets through oral, okay? So at that time, orators and poets enjoyed a high social status in the Arab community. Okay, so at that point, okay, they were mostly dependent on verbal communication. So we can say that poets are also the media at that time. What is a media? What is a medium? Okay, medium is actually the thing that you use to transmit the information. So here you don't have television just yet. Okay, so where do you get information? From these poets. You get entertainment from them. So they are considered like a medium. Okay, and we already know that the Quran in itself is beautiful poetry. All right. Why is the Quran, okay, not very literal? Okay, it uses language, okay, of course Arabic, though I'm not a master in Arabic, okay. But it is said, okay, that the Quran is very poetic. Why? Because during this time in Arabia, okay, this is what the people liked. And the Quran must use language, okay, that is beyond humans. Okay, so that's why they come up with poetry, okay, or sentences that cannot be constructed by everyday Arab people at that time. Okay, but the prophet was not a poet. Okay, the prophet is not a poet. That means the prophet is not really good in putting, you know, flowery sentences. He's very literal. Why was the prophet not a poet when we say that during this time poets enjoy high social status? Why do you think Allah did not make the prophet a poet? While the Quran is full of poetry. What is it? Okay.
Because I think because if he did, people will think that he made the Quran.
Yes, very good. All right. This is the reason. Because there must be a distinction between the words of Allah and the words of the Prophet. Okay. The words of Allah is beautiful, very poetic. Okay. But the Prophet is just the medium. He doesn't translate. He just brings those sentences to be disseminated to the people. So the people already know that Muhammad cannot come out with all these sentences, okay, because he is not a poet. So this must be a divine revelation, words that are being said not by the humans, okay? So that is why the Quran is a communication miracle, okay? Why is the Quran miracle? Of course, as Muslims, we say it is the word of Allah, okay? But it itself is a miracle because it contains, all right, contents that are just not factual, but is being presented via artistic poetry, okay? So among early Muslims, the main mode of communication is oral, right? But soon they started to adopt written communication. Okay? Excuse me. So, all right, oral communication, okay, so the revelation or the verses of Al-Quran, okay, to the Prophet was lived by the members of the community. Now, how did they preserve, okay, the words of Allah, okay, during those early times when they cannot read or they don't record it? Okay, they don't write it down. Okay, in the early days, what they do is they inherit, okay, those teachings of the prophets. That means it was lived by the members of the community, who in some cases witnessed the actual moments in which the prophet received the revelations. Okay, these revelations would then be communicated to the companions who would immediately exchange the text and learn the verses by heart. So this is the miracle of the Quran. Okay, it was not brought down, okay, automatically in the form of a book. It was brought down words by words, different surahs, okay. But the Muslims at that time were able to maintain, okay, to preserve all these words because they keep it, all right, and they memorize it by heart. And it was brought down through generations, okay. So this is what we consider, if we took this into modern times, we consider this social networking. Okay? A social network of communication in which the Prophet occupied the key position with the companions as members in the network. Right? So the Prophet is the source of information. He says something, the companions would listen and memorize and share with one another. Okay, and how do they learn? They learn face to face. Okay, and they learn through experiences. Okay, and today there's a theory, people call it vicarious learning. What is vicarious learning? Learning from other people's experience. Okay, so the Muslims at that time, they learned about Islam through the Prophet's experience or the experiences of companions close to him. Okay. And the khutbah, okay, you listen to the khutbah, especially on Fridays, okay? So the khutbah is itself a very powerful form of oral communication, okay? And we can consider it persuasive communication, okay? Now, why do we look at this, okay? All of this you know already. But you know it, but you take it for granted because we don't put it within a communication context. Okay, we do not appreciate that the Prophet is a very strategic communicator. Okay, so he has used all of these theories, persuasive communication, vicarious learning, okay, in his everyday teachings. Okay, So why do we have to talk about this? That later on, when you study or when you write or when you do your research, okay, you can go back and take examples from the Prophet's lives and experiences rather than just being very dependent on Western influences or Western sources. Okay? So far, right? Okay, oral communication. Then, when Islam expanded, from Mecca to Medina, and when they were in Medina, they managed to establish a kingdom, an Islamic kingdom, and the Prophet sent his companions, okay, to travel, okay, to bring the words of Allah. So now it's becoming harder to just depend on oral communication, isn't it? All right, because one friend is in Mecca, one friend is in Iraq, one friend in another part of the Middle East. Okay, so how do they communicate? Okay, so then they started, okay, to depend on written communication. And once, okay, information is written, it is automatically documented. Then you have what we have today, medium, a book, a document, a piece of paper. That is a medium, right? So documentation at that time became important. Political covenants, truces and agreements with the tribes of Arabia, like the famous Hudaybiyah truce. What is the Hudaybiyah truce? Okay, between, okay, the Quraysh, right, the believers and non-believers, right, they have the Hudaybiyah truce, okay, where they agree not to fight, and they list down several rules. So those rules were written down. They were no longer oral. Okay? So when it is documented, we can still learn about those rules, okay, word by word until today, because it was preserved and documented. The same thing as the Madinan Covenant. Okay, what is it in Malay? Piagam Madinah, which is the first constitution of the first Muslim state. Okay. So when, when written communication became important, they started to create new professionals, new job, for example. Okay, they have what we call as official writers. Because at that time, okay, not many people were literate and able to write. So those who can write, okay, became very important, members of the society. And they are what we consider as communication professionals today. Okay, like your speech writer, PR practitioner, okay? So these are already available, okay, in times of the Prophet. Can you get that? Okay. So with communication, with more sophisticated, okay, ways of communicating and preserving information, it has also helped the expansion of Islam. Okay. Without these documents, okay, without these rulings, Islam cannot flourish. All right. And this has allowed for diplomatic correspondence. You know, right, during the times of the prophets, okay, he did not, okay, share Islam, okay, via wars or violence. He always sent correspondence to nicely, okay, wisely invite others into Islam. So this is what we call as diplomatic. So later on in your 4th year, probably you will be studying diplomatic communication. Okay, so all of this has already been practiced during the time of the prophets. Okay, you know the stories of the documentation of the Quran, right? Okay, the Quran was not brought down by Allah through a piece of book. Okay, it was brought down through many years, through small terms and phrases. Okay, so in the early years, okay, when the prophet has passed away, there were concerns. okay, the early Muslim community was concerned. What were they concerned about? That the people will just forget the words of Allah, the Prophet's teachings. Okay, so some say, we need to record, we need to document them. Okay, but during the time of Abu Bakr, he was not really inclined because he was afraid that people will misuse. Okay, that people will wrongly put their own words. Okay, but as time, moved on, okay, many of the companions have died, and those hufas, or hafiz, that have memorized the Quran, many of them has martyred. Okay, that means they have died, especially during the war. So Umar ibn al-Khattab suggested that that the government at that time must write down the Quran as a single text. Okay, so it is Zaid ibn Thabit, okay, that was given the duty to compile it in one place. Okay, so how to compile? There's so many, okay, people memorizing the words of Allah. Okay, and also, okay, there are many, sometimes different interpretations. Okay, but because there is the need, okay, they need to do it. It's not a choice anymore because many people have died, and if they don't compile it, okay, they risk, okay, losing all of these teachings. Okay, so they did compile. So they compile the Quran, and then they come into another problem, right? All the words are already compiled. They have a document. They have already the book. But they discovered another problem, and what was that problem? Interpretation. Okay, even among the Arabs, they have different, what we call it, pronunciation, different slangs. Okay, so if, okay, just like in Malaysia, right, the Kelantanis would sound very different when they read the Quran or when somebody from Kedah. Okay, a Chinese would sound different when they read the Quran when compared to a Pakistani. Okay, so because the Quran is very unique, okay, and the meaning can be easily misinterpreted even when you use different slang. Okay, they started to say, okay, not only do we need to compile, okay, all of these words of Allah, we need to also maintain and preserve, okay, the meaning that we must make, okay, there must be a universal, only one way of reading the Quran. Cannot use the Chinese slang or the Malay slang. Okay, so that's when they started to have the Usman or the Mazhab Usmani. All right, it is a landmark in the history of Islamic communication as it provided the first official text of Al-Quran written in one version of the Arabic language. Okay, so how do they do that? All right, with all your tajweed classes and all those, I don't know what you call it, okay, but they have been able to unify, okay, the way one can read the Quran. And this is again the miracle of the Quran, because no other scripture or no other book has been able to preserve the content, okay, as well as preserve its interpretation. That means there's a unified interpretation that when a Chinese read it, that when a Malay read it, that when an Arab read it, they will get the same meaning. Okay? So symbolic interaction is a theory, okay, that the Westerners use to refer to this concept of collective cultural interpretation of meaning. Right? And when Islam grew bigger, okay, becoming, okay, a powerful state, right, they started to put communication, okay, they started to consider communication more than just, okay, getting information. Now they understand that communication is now part of a government, that it is a foundation of a modern society, okay, that what we call it, to maintain a country or maintain some kind of a civilization, okay, communication must be made part of the system. So basically, political communication, diplomatic communication, okay, public relations have all been practiced during the early times of Islamic civilization. So Umar al-Khattab, okay, we probably have known that he is a very famous, what we call it, statesman, very intelligent. He first introduced the Diwan al-Bara'at. Okay, I don't even know how it's supposed to sound in Arabic. How does it supposed to sound like, Shahad? Can you help me? Diwan al-what? How do you pronounce it, Shahad? Help us.
Let me see, wait a minute.
Okay, or Loli, can you help us? How is in Arabic? Okay. Diwan al-Bara'at or something like that.
I think it's Diwan al-Barid or something.
Oh, okay. So Diwan al-Barid. Okay, okay. I don't know. Okay.
I'm not sure. I
All
guess.
Okay. Well, your guess must be better than mine. Okay. But point is what? Okay, he has created the Bureau of Post. What does this mean? It means now communication has become regulated. It has a proper system. Okay, there is a department of communication. Basically, this is a department of communication that handles all the information. Okay, especially between the Khalifa and his governors. These wala'as, I don't know, but I know this is amils. Okay, and between the governors and the commissioners, and between the leaders and the everyday people. Okay, so what we mentioned as modern, what we call it, communication systems has been established even during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Okay, because with this Bureau of Post, he had laid down the foundation of an Islamic tradition of executive correspondence, filing, and archiving. Okay, you may see this as just, everyday practices, filing, writing letters, but these are actually very powerful initiatives of the time. Okay, because they manage to archive, that means they document all of their information. Okay, can you understand? So this has helped in creating social and political stability and unity. How come? Because people get the same information. All right? Can you follow so far? Okay. Any questions? No question. Okay. And then what about the hadith? Okay. We've already learned the history of the Quran, why it had to be documented. Okay, because people who memorize them, many have died. Okay, and there is a need to have a document, a universal document that can be read by almost Muslims. Okay, but what about the hadith? Okay, what are the hadith? So these are the words and the practices of the Prophet. Okay, so these also needed to be documented. So is the Khalifah Umar ibn Aziz, okay, that adopted the first official policy towards the writing of the hadith. Okay, Umar Abdul Aziz. Okay, why? Again, that's why they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. Have you heard the term? The necessity is the mother of all invention. Because there is the need to preserve this, because most of those people, okay, companions of the Prophet, has passed away. And when they pass away, they bring with them the knowledge they gained from the Prophets. So it is important that we record all this knowledge before they go. Okay? So because of this devastation of knowledge, they started to write down the hadith and compile it into a book. Okay? And when they compiled this into the book, okay, this process actually laid down the foundation of Islamic scientific thinking and analysis through their critical analytical approaches of text verification. What does this mean? All of you have, or later on, you'll be taking research methodology, okay? And all of you will need to do research. You need to do your final year project, okay? So when we do research, we need to use scientific methods. And when we study scientific methods, it's usually we consider it a Western invention. We will learn American textbooks, okay? But we don't acknowledge that actually in Islam, all right, and through our Islamic history, scientific methodology and scientific thinking has been used, okay, thousands of years before the rise of the Western scientific thinking. Because to list down the hadith is not just an easy, okay, they did not take the easy path, okay. You know how they do it, right? They use many filtration, okay. When they want to compile one word, okay, or one statement made by the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, okay, they will not just take it, they will need to go through verification processes. Okay, and this is the foundation of Islamic thinking. In Islam, you don't just take it, all right? You need to analyze. Okay, and this is also the concept that is being used today. All right, tabayun. Okay, fake news. So Islam has long taught us, okay, that we must be very critical, okay, of all the information that we get. Okay, so all of these concepts are not modern invention. Okay, they have been around, okay, during the time of early Islamic history. Okay, so they use through critical analytical approaches to text verification. So this is considered a rigorous scientific methods. Okay. Okay, books. All right. You know about the golden age of Islam? Okay. We always learn about the golden age of the Western civilizations. Okay, even now we are still living the golden age of Western civilizations. Right? You know how the Westerners, okay, when Islam was experiencing its golden age, okay, the Westerners, the Europeans were experiencing their dark ages. That means we became civilized before that. Okay? Why were they in their dark ages? Because at that time, they were ruled by the churches, okay, who like to preserve information. Okay? On the other hand, during the golden age of Islamic civilization, okay, they like to share information. Okay? And share knowledge. Okay? So books were considered a treasure during this time. Okay? The Muslim world acquired the art of paper making in the 8th century in Persia. Okay, and it is our ancestors that brought paper making to India and Europe. Okay, but most of the time we don't appreciate this history because we don't know. Okay, of course, the Chinese would claim also they also have their invention, which was much earlier than the European inventions. Okay, so during the time of the Islamic civilization, the Umayyad and the Abbasid civilizations, those were the golden ages of Islam. Okay, why were we so prosperous? It's not just because we managed to conquer half of the world, but it is because of the focus on the transmission of knowledge. Okay, so public libraries, this is also a modern invention. Public libraries. Remember we talked about how Sayyidina Umar started the first postal department. Okay, it was also the Islamic civilization that started to have libraries. And libraries here the word that we need to focus on is public. What does public means? It means here that all of the content of the library is opened for everyone, not just the elites, not just the imams. Okay, so this is democratic communication. So that information and knowledge were transmitted to all levels of society. So that's why there was a universal prosperity. Okay, there was an increase in literacy. And when there was increase in literacy, different people started to have different interests and did research and study on many areas. And this contributed to the scientific development that was established during the Islamic Golden Age. All right? So we have heard this history many times, right? Okay, of all those, what we call it, Islamic discoveries in terms of science and mathematics, even astronomy. So all of this happened during the dark ages of the European or the white people's civilization. Okay, so public libraries, okay, appeared in Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba, where books were made of paper. Okay, so this already at that time very modern. Okay, as images, you know, in Islam, okay, images were forbidden. Calligraphy became one of the elegant aspects of Islamic books. Okay, most of the small libraries were part of the mosques, whose primary purpose was copying of books from Greek, Pahlavi, Syrian, not Syriac. Okay, Syrian and Sanskrit into Arabic. Lectures, debates, and discussions on a wide range of religious, scientific, and philosophical issues of the day were debated at mosques, which also served as courts. And here we look at the centrality of the mosque. That is not just a place where you go to pray. Okay, or in UIA, a place you go to sleep between classes. Okay, it is a center of intellectual discourse. And here also, it's interesting for you to appreciate the fact that in early Muslim civilization, they were open, okay, to knowledge that came from all over the world, not just among Muslims. Okay, because how much they treasure knowledge, okay, they go out and seek knowledge from other civilizations. Okay, so information were coming, okay, in different languages, and they were all translated into Arabic. And the ability to translate is also a sophisticated communication process. Okay, so according to the 14th century legendary traveler Ibn Battuta, the Damascus booksellers market, okay, where is Damascus? Where's Damascus? Syria. Okay, beautiful Syria. Okay, so that is why, okay, Syria is experiencing hard times today because it is a significant place, okay, in Islamic history. Okay, so in Damascus, okay, during the 14th century, they already have a bookseller market. Okay, that media is already commercialized. What do we mean by commercialized? And later on we study. It's a term used by the Americans to make money from media. But the Muslims have long commercialized media, okay, long commercialized books, because then books itself becomes an industry. When you produce book, you need pen, you need ink, you need paper, you need glue. So this has also helped the what we call it economy. All right. So while you may think that this is just boring history, right? If you are able to put this into context, you can see that these are sophisticated development that has influenced and contributed our own use of media and communication. Okay, right? Do you know that the world's oldest library is an Islamic library? Okay. The Al-Qarawiyun, some of the one in Google I find is Al-Qarawiyin. What does it mean? My Arab sisters. What does it mean? Qarawiyun, Qarawiyun.
I think they're not the modern people. It's the opposite.
Opposite of the
Yeah,
modern
like
people?
the farmers, these things.
Oh, okay, all right. So maybe the meaning is trying to encapsulate the society at that time, okay? But Al-Qarawiyyan or whatever, okay, is the world's oldest working library. It is still in existence today. It was established in 859 in Fez, Morocco. You know Morocco, all right? Near Spain, by Fatima El-Fihriya, a daughter of a rich immigrant from modern-day Tunisia. I think there is a lot of interesting facts here. Okay, it is a woman that first established, okay, the world's first library, a Muslim woman. So this should tell us that Muslim woman, okay, has been, okay, what we call it, acknowledged, okay, years, hundreds and years before, okay, we are being seen as today as very, what we call it, today Muslim women are being seen as subjugated, but actually Muslim woman is the first one to establish a library. Okay, so history said that Fatima was the daughter of a rich person. Okay, so any of you daughter of a rich man? So you can open a library, huh? But nowadays, daughters of rich people, they don't open library, right? They go to Paris, okay, and open the handbag store, okay? But here, okay, the difference that you can see, all right? A young woman, okay, she is what we call it, affluent, but you know that she opened this library because she studied at this university. Okay, so this is an Islamic university, just like in Malaysia, but this one is, of course, okay, a very old university. She studied there. That means, okay, female Muslim women have been going to university thousands of years ago. Okay, so this should be acknowledged. And this was, okay, according to the picture, okay, this is her scroll.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So why is the stereotype that the Muslim women, they don't educate or they don't go to universities? From where they bring this stereotype?
Okay, where do we get these stereotypes?
Yeah.
The stereotypes comes from the Islamic experience itself, where we can see in many Muslim countries, women are still being subjugated. But of course, we can still ask why, because there is a long Islamic history. The history that I'm talking about is the golden age. Okay, what happened after the golden age? The dark age. So we are still coming out of the dark age.
So they're just judging from the dark age, right?
Yes, okay, because it's so much easier to stereotype.
Yeah.
And why do we listen to these stereotypes? We are Muslims, but sometimes we believe these stereotypes.
Because they make us believe that thing.
It's so easy for us to blame them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yes,
Yeah.
they are at fault, but we cannot keep blaming.
Okay. Thank you.
Start first by acknowledging our history. Okay. We can start by learning in the universities. You know that when you go to universities, okay, you don't just learn for the sake of reading the textbook or to pass your exam. You learn to really understand, appreciate your own background, and also you learn because you want to change the world and be proud of being a Muslim. Okay? because I always see students, right? They always say they are here because their parents asked them to be here. Okay, that many would claim that when they work, okay, it's as if it was useless to be in the university. All right, nothing from the textbook prepared them from the work life. Of course, if you feel that the university, okay, did not help you in your working life, it means that you did not study at the university. You were just wasting your time in class. Because in the university, it's not just about capturing knowledge from textbooks, but it's also experiencing what? Discipline, commitment. Okay? For example, you, Doa, do I call you Doa?
Yes.
Well, your name is the Doa. Okay?
Yeah, you pray, dua.
Yeah, very good. Okay, when we mention your name, you get a prayer already. Okay? Okay, but for you to be able to be here already is a form of a commitment and initiative. Okay? If you are not registered in this class, you'd still be sleeping. So this is something you need to learn in university life. Okay? Alright, so that is probably a little out of topic. Okay? But like I said, this is what you learn in the university, not just what we get in the slides. Right? Okay. So here, okay? So we have this one, okay, the first library. Okay? What has it got to do with media and communication? Libraries is where you put all the books. Okay? And especially during this time, it's the only mode of mass communication. There's no TV, no radio. Can you follow? Okay? So if you are rich, then you can go to Morocco and then you can visit these places, yeah? Okay? But if I were to ask you if you can travel, where is the first place you want to go? Suraya, where do you want to go? The first place you want to go? When if you don't know?
Okay.
You want to go to Gombak?
I
Okay.
want to go to my country,
Your country where?
Bangladesh.
Sorry, cannot hear you.
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. Where are you now?
I'm in Malaysia.
Oh, so you're homesick, so I cannot ask you. Okay? All right? Homesick, of course. All right? You will be able, inshallah. Let's pray together. Okay? But probably most of us, okay, modern Muslims, we want to travel to Paris, to Europe, okay?
UK.
UK, all right? UK, and you die of COVID there, all right? US, okay? That's where we want to go because we don't acknowledge our own beauty and history, okay? And then, of course, in the early Islamic times, there were many libraries, okay? But one of the most prominent library is the Baitul Hikmah, okay? Where it's a library based in Baghdad, okay? Iraq today. Okay, isn't it sad, okay? We have beautiful libraries in Syria and in Baghdad, in Iraq, but these countries are in bad shape today. Okay, but they were the center of Islamic civilization. Okay, so Baitul Hikmah based in Baghdad from the 9th to 13th century. So what's the unique characteristics? Because this library is open to all people of different ethnicities and religion. Okay, Hindus, Jews, Christian scholars were allowed to study there. So they translated books into Arabic and preserved them. Scholars at House of Wisdom, okay, the translation of Baitul Hikmah, Wisdom, made many remarkable original contributions in diverse fields. Okay, because we learned from one another and we also learned from other people. Okay, so this is what we hope to be able to do at the university. We can learn from one another. All right, so they have a very big collection with works on almost every subject in every language. Okay, and they started to procure books. So this is modern library. Procure books mean what? They started to go all over the world and buy books. Procure means buy. Okay, so they go to different countries here. They go to the European countries. Okay, go to India. So they buy books. Why? Because they understand the power of knowledge. Okay, so they also started the translation bureau. Okay, this is also another modern invention. A bureau just to translate books. Okay, so we can even say that Islamic civilization, okay, started the modern library systems. Okay, and they even have astronomical observatory. Okay, all right. So this is a traditional image depicting the process at that time. So calligraphy is also a unique medium. Okay, it's unique to Islam. Why? Because strict and conservative most Islamic rules does not allow us to draw images. Okay, so our ancestors were creative enough to find an alternative in calligraphy. Okay, so chapters and excerpts from the Quran are a common and almost universal text upon which Islamic calligraphy is based. Although calligraphy today is not entirely about Islamic scriptures, but it started from there. So Islamic calligraphy is not limited, this is what I said just now, it's not limited to strictly religious subjects, objects or spaces. Like all Islamic art, it encompasses a diverse array of works created in a wide variety of contexts. Okay. Although the academic tradition of Islamic calligraphy began in Baghdad, the center of the Islamic Empire during much of its early history, it eventually spread as far as India and Spain. All right, so calligraphy became hybrids, the style became different. Of course, we also acknowledge the Chinese calligraphy. All right, you know how the Chinese calligraphy, and sometimes they draw the Islamic words, but it became an animal. I don't know how they do it. All right, but it's very unique. Poetry. Okay. So poetry, some strict believers, probably do not favor poetry. Okay, because poetry, if in excessiveness, can be quite, what we call it, it can be like a drug, poetry, just like singing. Okay, what do we mean by art? By drugging you. It tends to take you out of reality if it's too much, right? That's why some strict Islamic teachings does not favor it. Okay, but we have already mentioned just now, the Quran in itself is poetry. And Allah loves everything that is beautiful. And beautiful words, can be very powerful. Okay, so Muslim poets adapted the pre-Islamic genre of qasida, where they speak out the poem very nicely, almost like singing. Okay, anyone can share how to do qasida? Anyone know how to do qasida? Ashraf can? Okay, so you probably can just rap. Okay, so qasida, can I even say that qasida is the origin of rap? That you use the spoken words, but you add melody, and you harmonize to make it sound beautiful. Maybe even that. Okay, so I'm going to tell Kanye to write, Islamic history of rap music. Okay, so Muslim poets adapted the pre-Islamic genre of qasida, the monorhyme praise poem for religious purposes. Instead of praising a ruler or a poet's patron, or today's music, what do we praise? Pop music, K-pop. Praise what? Ice cream. Okay, so today the songs that you listen to, I listen to, unfortunately, and even my children listen to, are always about romantic love. And even worse, sex. That's all the songs are about today, isn't it? Right? So, but in Islam, okay, we always need to praise God. Okay? So instead of praising someone else, okay, Qasida used to praise God, to eulogize the prophet, or to laud and lament the martyr heroes of Shia Islam. Not Shia, sorry, this is wrong, very dangerous. Cannot say Shia. Okay, point is in general. All right, but yes, why is the term Shia just now? Because most of these qasida are related to Sufism, and mostly also is adopted by the Shia. Okay, but we are all Sunnis here. Okay, but we acknowledge the centrality of poetry. And of course, all right, you've probably heard, okay, one of the most famous poets in the world, okay, is Rumi. Okay, Muslims and non-Muslim alike have quoted Rumi. Okay, but of course, Rumi or Ibn Arabi can be quite controversial to some people, okay? But we're not going to go into the politics of that. We're just going to appreciate their words, okay? Because, you know, poetry, the use of hymns, qasida, music, some religious scholars do not agree to that.
I think they used to use poetry to grade their part and to say bad things about against them.
They do it to what? To say bad
Yeah,
things?
like they were fighting by poetry.
Oh, okay. Who?
Yeah.
Fighting among the Muslims?
I don't know. They were parties, right? So one from each party used to say poetry or poem. Yeah, say good things about their party and say bad things about the other party.
Okay.
So they used to fight by poetry.
Okay, they use poetry to fight one another. All right. Well, I guess that would be better than using guns and bombs. Okay. Yes. Okay. So Jalaluddin Al-Rumi. Okay. Some, like I said, in this class, okay, we're not going to talk about the politics of the religion. We just want to acknowledge, okay, the communication aspects of the religion. Okay, and that Islam, okay, comes through very beautiful words, and some of it has been encapsulated, okay, or preserved by our poets. Okay, so here, okay, Hamza, I got one for you. You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. How many times have your heart been broken, Hamza? Don't know, not yet. Okay, Lolly?
Yes,
Okay,
madam.
how many times have your heart been broken? Not yet. Okay, you have to do it, all right? You take care of your heart. Okay, but isn't it beautiful? It doesn't mean broken heart in terms of your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It means, okay, surviving through failures or downsides, isn't it? All right. So, and probably nowadays it's good to have this. Raise your words, not voice. It is rain that grow flowers, not thunder. Okay, isn't it beautiful? All right, okay. Or that wisdom is the child of patience. Okay, or how can the heart travel to God when it is chained by its desires? Okay, and I think this is relevant to all of us. All right, there are so many worldly things, okay, that guides our everyday life. What's next? Okay, Islamic libraries. Oh, this one, oh, sorry. It should be up here. Okay, when we're talking about Islamic libraries. Hold on. Why isn't it moving? Sorry, we need to reverse. Okay, rewind. When we talk about Islamic libraries just now, okay, we talk about Baitul Hikmah, and we talked about how marvelous it was and how big and prosperous. But unfortunately, okay, the library was destroyed. Okay, it was destroyed during the Abbasid era, okay, when the Muslims lost to the Mongols. Okay, and together, okay, this is also the start. Although there were many other great Islamic civilizations, okay, none reached the peak as the Abbasid. Okay, and one of the reasons is many of the books and the knowledge and scientific discoveries were destroyed. Okay, so it was said the books from Baghdad's library were thrown into the Tigris River in such quantities that the river ran black with the ink from the books. Do you understand what this means? That the Mongols destroyed the books, threw all of it into the river, that even the river turned black from ink. Okay? All right, so far clear? So we've talked about that in relations to calligraphy and poetry. Okay? So here, okay, we move forward, all right, to more modern civilization, the Ottoman civilization, which is the last Islamic, what we call it, caliphate, isn't it? The Ottoman. All right. Where are you from?
From Yemen.
From Yemen. Okay. All right. Just asking. Okay. So I thought because you look kind of Turkish, so this may relate to you. Okay. So the Ottoman in Turkey, right? Of course, okay, the civilization is not just Turkey. Okay, it's one of the world's ever biggest civilization. Almost half of the world were under the Ottoman Empire. Okay, but the center is in Turkey, sorry. Okay, so one of the most sophisticated communication development they created was the Ottoman postal system. Of course, Umar has created it long before them, but they came out with the most modern and sophisticated. That the postal system we have today is a replica or was what we call it, inspired by the Ottoman postal system. Because, okay, during these times, okay, no telegraph, no internet, no electricity. So what did they have? They have horses and they have men. Okay, and these were the first postmen. Okay, so they came up with a way to distribute information faster, because the what we call it, the caliphate, you know, the geography is very wide. Okay, they were covering Europe and South Asia, okay, and also in what we call it, in the Middle East. So they needed to get information all over the world. So how to get information fast, to spread information? They use the messenger tatas. Okay, they don't use Yahoo Messenger. Okay, I don't know if you are familiar with Yahoo Messenger. Okay, or Messenger on Facebook. The Islamic civilization start with the messenger Tatars. Okay, were postmen, important individuals ensuring communication within the Ottoman Empire. It is said that they were called the Tatars since they were chosen among the Tatar people in the early practice. You know the Tartar people? The Tatar people are not Turkish. Okay, they are like half Russian, half Chinese. Okay, they live in those areas. Okay, in Uzbekistan, in those areas. But they were known to be physically strong, and they were good horsemen. Okay, so they look like Russians, but usually they have Chinese eyes. Okay, so they were famous. Okay, so they rode day and night and ate and slept on the horseback. I'm not sure if they are exaggerating here. They may need to go to the toilet. Okay, but it was possible because they were very dedicated to moving really fast on their horses. it became possible for them to deliver a message in a short time, even between the furthest distances within the borders of the empire. All right? Okay, so this was the early way of moving it, but throughout this, what we call it, history, the postal system became more sophisticated, right? And they started to use bicycles, and this is the system, okay, a modern system. In the early 19th century, modern postal organization began to be founded by the Ottoman Empire, and they started to use the postage stamps. Okay, all right. So basically, that is just the class today. Okay, so the first two chapters. In the last class, we talk about the Muslim societies, right? In this class, we just want to acknowledge, to appreciate our own histories. Because in the coming classes, we'll be focusing on the Western theories. Okay? So before we take the Western perspectives, okay, and talk about what the Westerners tell us, we must appreciate our own history first. Okay? All right, any questions? Any questions? Okay. Okay, so your assignment, I will be putting you in groups. Okay, so I will give you the list probably latest by Thursday. So you can already start thinking and collaborating. Okay. Okay, I'm sure some of you would be in Malaysia, some of you would be out of Malaysia, most of you would be in Gombak. Okay, it's a great challenge for you to communicate and get together. All right. And I guess you would have to continually have virtual meetings. Yeah. So you can start by this week. Okay. So that is for your assignment. Remember, you will have a quiz. Okay, but we will discuss that later on, probably week 4, week 5, beyond that. Okay. All right. If there's no question, I'm assuming no questions. Okay. Remember, no class on Thursday. Okay. We meet once a week. But if you have issues, you can just ask. Okay, so we end the class. Yes, Mahdi.
Teacher, can I ask a question?
Teacher, okay, can.
Sorry for taking your time. And I want to ask that, is there any attendance?
Okay.
Like attendance? Yeah.
All right, very good. Okay, normal classes must have attendance. But because we are in the middle of a crisis, okay, no attendance. But, okay, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will take your attendance.
Amen.
Okay, so you got to come. Okay. But like I told you, there is no specific textbooks. There will be reading materials, but the whole course will be dependent on the slides and the lecture. You need to come to class to understand what we are covering in this course. And after all, it's only once a week. Okay? All right, thank you, Mahdi. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay? All right? No other questions? Okay, we end the class with tasbih, kafarah, and wellness. Okay, bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you,
madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
madam.
night.
Thank you, doctor.